Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen Dennis, and I chair the program committee on behalf of the Nanaimo Arts Council. And it's my privilege to welcome you and express my heartfelt appreciation for your presence here today. We're gathering to celebrate the achievements of short fiction writers in the Island Short Fiction Review. We are privileged to share their stories and acknowledge with gratitude and respect that we do so in the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. This program exists because of the assistance of broad community support. Vancouver Island Regional Library, especially Nanaimo North Branch and Judges Julie Carter and Darby Love. Vancouver Island University, the Department of Creative Writing and Journalism, the Center for Experiential Learning, and Adult Judge Kathy Page. The City of Nanaimo, and the Government of British Columbia, and the many volunteers who share their talents supporting the arts. Thank to all of you for enabling us to encourage all forms of artistic expression and support those who wish to share theirs. Now it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you to our exceptional volunteer program coordinators and interns from Vancouver Island University, Laurent, Lemay, and Jenaya. They have poured their hearts and souls into organizing this contest and ceremony, and we are grateful for their dedication. Laurent is a fourth-year creative writing student at VIU. He earned a writing and publishing diploma from Okanagan College and was the managing editor for the 2023 issue of Riga. His poem Tempest was published in Portal magazine in 2024. Jenaya is also a fourth-year creative writing and psychology student at VIU. She served as artistic director for Portal 2024 and is managing editor at the Navigator Student Press at Vancouver Island University. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our MCs, Jenaya and Laurent.
Thank you, Stephen, for that lovely introduction. We'll get started.
So we're going to begin the award ceremony with our junior category. Judge Julie Carter was unable to join us today, but we'll get to hear a few words from her and the other judges in a video that they've sent us. I know that this has been highly anticipated, so we'll get right into it. Please come up when your name is called. I would like to congratulate Josephine Sawyer for winning third place for her story, Werewolf. Thanks so much, Josie.
Congratulations.
Josie Sawyer is in the 7th grade and loves reading, writing stories, and playing her fiddle. She's inspired by fantasy and mystery books and really enjoys stories by J.K. Rowling, Rick Riordan, and Agatha Christie. Her dream is to study creative writing in high school and university, which I highly encourage, and become a professional fiddle player. She has written other stories on her own and in collaboration with friends, but this is her first story to be submitted for publication. Thank you, Josie, again for submitting to us. And in second place, congratulations to Elliott Richardson for his story, Ocean Friends. Elliott is in the 3rd grade at Oceanside Elementary School in Parksville. He loves reading and exploring nature. He is inspired by the ocean and loves learning about all creatures that live within it. I do as well. It's wonderful out there. He hopes to one day become a marine biologist. This is his first story. And finally, in first place, congratulations to Leah Dunham for her story, Glass Tiger. Leah is in the 7th grade and competes provincially with Nanaimo's Artistic Swimming Club. She loves reading and writing fiction, although she can rarely seem to finish her stories, which I also relate to. Leah loves drawing as much as she loves writing and swimming. Thank you, Leah. Now we have someone that's very, very shy, and I would love to invite Josie to read today, but if she's uncomfortable, then I'd be happy to read for her a bit of her story. Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. I've got it here as well.
Oh, you have it up too?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Don't worry, we got you. All right, this is the first page of Werewolf by Josephine Sawyer. The night was dark, and moonlight was leaking through the faded, old, tattered curtains of the little worn-down shack. Inside, a man slept peacefully, his hair and beard graying with age, and his face weathered and tanned from many long days of working in the sun. Beside his little metal bed lay a shepherd's stick, elegantly carved with a sheep's head at the top. It was made of wood, and polished so much that one could use it as a mirror. The little bed creaked and groaned noisily as the man shifted in his sleep, still dreaming. It looked like nothing could wake this man, not the gentle cooing of an owl, nor the wind rustling in the trees. Not even the frightened bleating of his sheep, cut short and drowned out by a loud howling. "Mum, why can't I go to the village by myself?" Cassie complained loudly to her mother, who was busy discussing a trade in the village square with the butcher, a tall, fair-haired man named Tom. Her mom looked over at her sternly, her blue eyes scanning Cassie with an icy gaze. "How many times do I have to tell you?" she snapped. "You should know." Cassie gazed up at her mother evenly. "I don't know anything," she said, opening her eyes wide and pretending to be innocent. "Nothing." Her mother's disappointed sigh sliced Cassie like a knife, but she wasn't about to let it show as her mother turned back to the butcher with an apologetic look. "We'll talk about your behavior later, Cassandra." Now it was Cassie's turn to sigh. She hated it when her mother talked about her behavior. It wasn't her fault she was smarter than her mom. "Now, Cassie," her mother started in her trying to be nice voice. "I've talked to you a lot about this, okay? And I'll only tell you one more time." Cassie waited patiently. She knew, word for word, what her mother was going to say, that there were werewolves, they ate some shepherd's sheep, blah, blah. The only reason she had brought it up was because she had an argument. "So you see," Cassie's mom was saying, wiggling one of her eyebrows towards Cassie, which she knew Cassie hated. "That's why you're not to go out alone." Now, if Elliott, Richardson, and his mom would like to share the podium for a moment and read his piece.
Why don't you just read this first part? You do. Okay, we decided change in speakers here. That's okay. Okay, this is called Ocean Friends. Deep beneath the ocean, there was a little eel named Wolfie. He was a lonely eel because the other fish were afraid of how he looked. While other fish had beautiful shining scales that glimmered and flashed, Wolfie had sharp teeth and beady eyes. Wolfie lived with his mom and dad, who loved him very much, but he was lonely. He wanted friends. One day he woke up and left his cozy eel nest to see if he could find other fish to play with. At first he didn't have much luck. Every fish he approached bubbled with fear and swam quickly away. Little Wolfie was feeling discouraged, but still he continued. After swimming for what seemed like hours, he took a rest in some seagrass. Suddenly there was a flurry of activity, and the seagrass that Wolfie was in smacked him on the nose. "Stay away, eel!" the seagrass shouted, but it wasn't seagrass at all. Before his eyes, the seagrass seemed to transform into a creature. "What are you?" he asked in surprise. "Oh, I'm a pipefish, of course," the creature said, sounding annoyed. "Oh, I thought you were seagrass. Sorry. I'm Wolfie," said the eel. He smiled, showing all his teeth. Pipefish shrank back in fear, but didn't swim away. She looked at him for a moment, then said, "My name is Piper." He smiled even wider. She didn't swim away. "Will you be my friend?" he asked her shyly. "I'm on an adventure to find some friends who aren't scared of me." Piper looked at Wolfie, and then smiled again. "I would love to play with you." And then she looked at him seriously. "Just don't mistake me for seagrass again." "Promise," said Wolfie, and the two of them swam off together to look for more fish friends. Wolfie and Piper swam happily together for quite a ways before they realized they had swam into much deeper water. Is it just me, or is it darker now? Piper said, looking around nervously. Wolfie was about to reply. It became even darker still, as the two of them were surrounded by swirls of ink. Piper, where are you? I can't see, shouted Wolfie. Me neither, shrieked Piper. Me neither, said a third voice from the shadows. Who's that? Said Wolfie, looking around nervously. Oh, it's just me, said the voice. My name's Reacher. I didn't see you there. I was practicing my hiding technique with my ink, and you must have been caught up in it. The ink started to disappear, and Piper and Wolfie quickly found each other again, huddled close. In front of them, they saw a giant eye blinking. The two friends were about to swim away when Reacher said, Please don't leave. I didn't mean to scare you. I was just playing around with my ink. Reacher swam slowly forward, revealing himself. He was much bigger than the others, with shining skin and many exploring arms. What are you? Asked Wolfie, swimming forward curiously. I'm a squid, he said, and waved his many arms. Nice to meet you.
Thank you so much, Elliott, for sharing. I now welcome Leah Dunham to read her story, Glass Tiger, if she would like to. Thank you so much.
Do I just do the first page?
Yeah, you do whatever you want.
My story is called Glass Tiger. I rubbed the smooth glass against my cheek, feeling the ridges and curves and raised bumps of the perfect carving slide over my skin. The glass felt cool between my warm fingers. The tiger's four sharp-pawed legs stood straight and proud, its head arched backwards like a wolf howling at the moon, chest ruffled in the imaginary wind. The opposite of what I felt. The exact complete opposite. Pride seemed to course through it, filling its amethyst eyes like it could do anything in the world. And even though the glass tiger was the size of my fist, I felt small and insignificant compared to its majestic, poised, and powerful expression. And sometimes that proud expression would become more and more familiar and real, until it felt as if I could almost hear her voice coming echoing through the glass. And it would wrap around me a bit like a blanket, until bittersweet memories washed away any other thought, and it felt as if she was here with me right now. But deep down, I knew that her voice wasn't really here. I knew that it couldn't be, and all that I have left with those bittersweet memories captured within the beautiful glass carving. The memories of Mom. Playing badminton with her in the yard, watching Ratatouille, her all-time favorite movie, baking sugar cookies for Grandpa when he'd been sick, listening to her read bedtime stories to me many years ago, trying to sneak a peek in her art room where she'd been working on that special surprise for me. And the hardest memory of all, the one that made me cry myself to sleep every single night, only to wake me up again. Mom handing me a shiny box from her hospital bed, her shaking hand placing a delicate cardboard in mine. The tiger is made from the rest of glass she grasped as I opened the box. I hope that when you hold it tight, you'll remember all those days we spent together, me, you, and your father. The tiger is a creature of fierce pride and loyalty and love, just like our special family. And she turned to my dad and wrapped her hand around his and whispered to us both quietly, We'll always have a family. We'll always be a family. She placed her other hand over my heart, because we have each other in our hearts, always. But pain and fear was building up inside me, and I couldn't help but choke out my last words. But how can we be a family if you're not here? And I would do anything to get those days back, anything, just to see her face once more, to hear her laughter, to hear her smile.
Thank you so much, Leah, for that. Okay, now we get to sit for a minute and watch what the judges have to say. All good things, I promise. So first, we have Julie Carter's little video.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie and I'm a librarian at the Nanaimo North Branch of Vancouver Island Regional Library. And I was the judge for the junior category of the Island Short Fiction Review this year. And the junior category is for writers ages 12 years and under. I would like to thank everyone who submitted a story this year for the junior category. I read them all, and yeah, every year it's one of my favorite tasks to do every year is read your stories, because you're just all so creative. It's just amazing. So, third place this year goes to Josephine Sawyer with the story Werewolf. This is a story that hooked me right from the very first scene. I needed to know what had happened to the sheep. And at the same time, I was worried to know what happened to the sheep because I was pretty sure something bad had happened since the story was called Werewolf, probably something supernatural going on. I really did feel a strong sense of dread right from the start, and I was quite frightened to keep on reading and find out where the story was going because the sense of dread just kept getting larger and larger. It really was an atmospheric story. I felt like I was there with the characters. I was worried that something bad was going to happen to the main character or her friends or family, and I really was rooting for everyone to make it safely to the end of the story and get out of the story alive because I just didn't know what was going to go on. There were also several unexpected twists that I didn't see coming. And a couple of them were really gasp-worthy. Just, I had no idea. So that was, that really added to the story as well. So a very creepy story, very atmospheric story, very well done. Congratulations, Josephine. And in second place in the junior category this year, we have Elliott Richardson with the story Ocean Friends. And this is a buoyant story celebrating friendship and inclusion. It features 4 ocean creatures that are all unique, and they're all a little lonely because they're unique, and other ocean creatures are scared of them. So eventually these 4 creatures meet, and we see where the story goes from there. I absolutely loved the setting in this story. It was set in the ocean, and I was amazed how much the author knew about the ocean. I ended up Googling quite a few things because there were things I'd never heard of. So I really, really learned a lot about the ocean by reading this story. For example, I didn't know there was a midnight zone, never heard of that. And even some of the main characters were species that aren't that well known, such as a dream anglerfish. So I had to Google that, see what that looked like. And sure enough, it was like it was described in the story. So I really appreciated the unique setting and the chance to learn about a completely different world. The unique setting also gave the author some great opportunities for setting up some fantastic scenes and scenarios because everything is different if a story is set under the ocean with creatures that aren't people. So, playing hide and seek, completely different if you're under the ocean. And I really, really did enjoy reading those scenes. So I read this story with a smile on my face. The characters were just so lovely, and I really did adore each and every one of them and their individual character traits. And I was so happy that they became friends with each other. So congratulations, Elliott. First place this year in the Island Short Fiction Review Junior category goes to Leah Dunham for the story Glass Tiger. This is a story that centers around a girl who has recently lost her mother. And before her mother died, she gave her a little glass tiger, which is, of course, what the story is named after. This is a story that is absolutely infused with emotion. I could truly feel the main character's pain throughout the story, so much so that I was almost in tears for parts of it. It really was moving. It was made even more poignant and moving through the very talented use of emphasis and flashbacks. The author used both of those very, very well. And then also the use of description throughout the story was brilliant. In particular, the glass tiger, I could truly picture what it looked like and what it represented. And just like the main character, when she handed the glass tiger to her friend, I really was worried she would drop it, just like the main character was worried she would drop it, because it already felt precious to me. I also liked how the details and the background and the significance of the tiger wasn't provided all at once, but was given kind of in little snippets throughout the story. That was a really, really good way of doing that, and just, giving little tidbits here and there. It really was an absolutely flawless story in every way, and the transformation of the tiger at the end was incredibly touching and poignant, and that really moved me too. So, fantastic story. Congratulations, Leah.
Wonderful. This is all going so well, isn't it? All right. Thank you so much. I know she's not here, but thank you, Julie, for your thoughtful and encouraging comments. And now it's time for our youth category. Our judge this year was Darby Love, who also wasn't able to make it. But anyhow, please come up when your name is called. Third place for the youth category goes to Cosmo Marchand for her story, Lost Woman. Cosmo attends Gulf Island Secondary School and lives in Duncan with her parents and 2 dogs. She is an avid reader of books and enjoys authors such as Donna Tartt, Jane Austen, Sylvia Plath, and Margaret Atwood, which are all excellent choices. She has been writing her own stories for most of her life, including many short stories, several unfinished novels, and a novella, which I hope to see someday. Thank you so much, Cosmo. Now, in second place for the youth category, we have Lilika Bagshaw for her story, Supernatural. Lilika is in the 8th grade and likes to play soccer, volleyball, and loves to bake. She enjoys reading fantasy and romance books, which inspired her to write her short story. If she's not writing a story, she's daydreaming and making up tales in her head. She doesn't know what job she wants when she's older, but she loves working with kids as well as writing, and this is the first story she's ever entered in a contest, but not the first one she's written. She wishes to enter more contests in the future. And of course, in first place for the youth category is Catriona Hicks for her story, F-I-S-H, Fish. Congratulations. Kat is in the 11th grade and loves swimming in the ocean and reading books with her cats. We've got a lot of swimmers in here today, don't we? She is inspired by nature and her favorite television programs. She speaks Japanese, and her dream is to have a job that lets her travel and experience new things and maybe write about them, which is wonderful. Thank you so much. And now she's comfortable, I'd love to invite Cosmo to read a bit of her piece for us. Wonderful, thank you.
I'll be reading the end of the story. Soon Miss Dowdy was fitted back together, section by section. By the time everything was put into place, she could barely move, twitching softly in utter exhaustion. She'd been reduced to a child crying for her mother, unable to articulate even the simplest of things. The light hurt her eyes, and her bones ached from beneath tissue and thinly stretched skin. She whimpered and curled onto herself, as tears began to leak from the corner of her eyes like some kind of perfunctory service. Mrs. Juxton and Mrs. Dowdy knelt before her and clutched her hands. They talked softly to her like they might talk to a child after a tantrum, reassuring her. Miss Dowdy babbled like a baby, pleading, sobbing, imploring the woman to help her escape. The woman laughed softly. They told her that she was being silly, that she was overreacting. Their faces were painted in amusement and soft compassion, but their eyes shone with a different emotion. A heavy guilt settled in each of their guts, and looking at Miss Dowdy they felt only pity. They were disgusted with themselves, completely, for dimming her rage, for putting her back together. Slowly she regained composure and became perfect once more, smiling self-consciously and saying she didn't know what came over her. Her eyes betrayed no emotion and her words were apologetic. The woman hated her for it. Mrs. Juxton smiled. The beast was dead and her duty would be done. Miss Dowdy would live a good life, an expensive life in a beautiful home where everything would be perfect. Her sister, the one she remembered as a child who ran gaily down grassy fields and argued with her father over dinner, could not survive this life. So the exorcism was complete and only beauty remained. I do. The words were spoken and the audience collapsed with applause. The blushing bride gazed lovingly into her husband's eyes, alight with joy. All around her in the audience, the women laughed and smiled, overjoyed for their friend, the new Mrs. Smith. Only the most observant can see the grief written in their faces as they mourned the woman, Miss Dowdy.
Thank you so much, Cosmo. That was wonderful. And the rest of the story is quite amazing. Would Lilika, please, if she's comfortable, come up to read an excerpt from her story, Supernatural. Let me just find it 1 second. All my secret pages under here. All right, there you go, hon. And you should just read the first 2 pages.
Okay. Katie, yells my older sister from the kitchen. What, I say, peering down the stairs from my bedroom to see her standing at the bottom waving a frying pan around. I think you missed your bus. What, again? Sometimes I wish my superpower is waking up early. Yeah. I run down the stairs with a comb, 2 books, and a sock. I run to my backpack and toss my books in. I put your lunch in for you, says Christy, a little smirk pulling on the tips of her lips. What did you make for me? It better not be that ham and mustard sandwich. I give her a look of annoyance and run to the living room and rip my phone from the charger, while vigorously brushing my hair. I throw my brush on the couch and sprint to the kitchen to grab a half-made bagel from Christy's hands while putting my sock on. I take my things and run out of the door. Christy steps onto the porch. Don't do anything crazy. Don't go skipping college, I turn back to her, giving her that smile that tells her I'll be fine. My older sister is the only one that knows about my secret. She is my best friend and caregiver because my parents are always away on big business trips. We never talk about their jobs, and I have no idea what they really do, but they do make a heck of a lot of money. I drum a little beat on our mailbox and then sprint to the forest in our backyard. I walk a decent way where no one can spot me, and then I transform into a hawk and soar out of the forest. I see my sister staring up at me and giving me that wicked smile she always does when I transform. You know, that smile that lets you know you did something stupid. I know I might get caught, but it's not like I'm going to walk to school. I glide through the air for a few seconds before finding my bus. I fold my wings in and dive onto the roof. I perch there for a little while until the bus gets close enough to my school, Greenford High. Then I spread my wings and jump, catching the air and gliding for a bit. I circle around the school once before I find my usual hiding spot and fly in and make sure that nobody is around before turning back into a human. I brush some feathers off my clothes before walking towards the school. I climb up the steps to the entrance to see Natalie waiting for me at the top. Natalie and I have been best friends since preschool, and we were lucky enough to stay in the same classes all of our life. You wake up again? Asks Natalie. Yeah, I look at her and we start laughing. You really need an alarm, she says. See you in class. She turns and waves. Okay, bye. I run to my locker and throw my books in. I pull out my biology notebook covered in stickers and my textbook. I notice a note stuck on the vents of my locker. I pull it out. Here we go again. I open it. I get these every morning. I know you have the gift, it says. Meet me in the gym at 12 p.m. sharp. I never listen to this. I just throw it in the trash because I hope it doesn't come back the next day. I'm about to throw it away when I notice something written on the other side. P.S. If you don't come today, I will call the DSF. Definitely a threat, but what can I do? The Destruction of Special Forces, or DSF, is an organization of special police that eliminates people like me with superpowers. I guess I'll just have to do what this person says. I don't have lunch at 12, but the kids a grade higher than me do. I'll just have to get a bathroom pass. I stuff my note in my pocket and rush to my class.
Thank you so much, Lilika. All right, and would Kat be comfortable reading her piece? Thank you so much. And you have it with you? Okay.
I think so, yeah.
Great. And I have this if you need it.
As I slipped through the gathering crowd, I felt insignificant. Like a petal falling into a bustling river, I wound around men and old women who barely acknowledged my passing as their necks strained like herons to see above the others out into the street. No doubt looking at the new shipment of fish, females inciting senseless harm. We knew that that name was nothing but lies, another excuse to label women as something evil so men could put them in their place. I managed to peer through the gawking crowd and caught a glimpse of the show. Lined up in rows, dozens of women were held in place by masked soldiers with batons in their belts and guns slung over their shoulders. My eyes followed a girl, maybe 12 years old. She was wearing lime green shorts, which did nothing to protect the fragile skin on her knees from pressing painfully into the asphalt. A gust of wind blew my hair over my eyes, a gentle reminder to continue on. But as my gaze lingered on the women, I couldn't help but make the connection that, like salmon, struggling to beat the current, they thrashed in the grips of their captors. The girl with the lime green shorts was fighting with particular vigor, until the masked soldier holding her pinned her arms to her side. Bile rose up in my throat when I noticed the cobalt ribbon around the female soldier's arm. She'd been sterilized. To their knees, a commander shouted, not even bothering to speak to the women he knew would rather die than obey his order. He aimed his command at the masked soldiers. I continued walking, wincing at the clean sounds of batons whacking the back of the women's legs. I used to think about helping them, about joining protests or forcing myself through the crowd to save them. That was before I realized how insignificant I was. One person against an army is the equivalent to an ant against a tsunami. Surely every last person in this crowd had made that connection. That was why none of us did anything when the commander shouted again, "Raise your guns." I put my hood on as though that feeble fabric would shield me from the deafening sound that was bound to erupt at any moment, and I finally made it away from the crowd. I walked along a roadside ditch until I found the familiar trail that led to the river where I caught my food. I needed to come back home with something. Another night without a meal, and I feared my brother wouldn't wake up tomorrow. The forest was quiet. My footsteps rustled some twigs, and I could hear birds flitting above me in the sun-buttered branches. I breathed in the smell of the dirt, the trees, and the rushing river. Then my heart caught in my throat. Bang.
Thank you so much, Kat. That was wonderful. All right, and now we get to hear what Darby Love has to say about your wonderful stories.
Hi everybody, my name's Darby Love and I am a librarian at the Nanaimo North Branch of Vancouver Island Regional Library, and I have worked at this branch for 10 years, and in that 10 years I have had lots of great opportunities to read the work of both adults and teens. I have to tell you teens, I really enjoy reading your work because you guys have like some pretty kooky plot lines. I mean kooky in the best possible way. I love kooky. So you always, keep me guessing when I'm reading your work. So thank you for bringing that energy and excitement to my reading. I noticed some definite themes in your work. There was a lot of really good work. It was so hard to pick, and I'm really proud of all of you. I don't write, I just read. It is really hard to write. So please applaud yourself for submitting, because that is huge. Just putting yourself out there is a big deal in any creative pursuit, and I really appreciate that you all did that. Okay, so the top 3, which feels super subjective because I think somebody else would have picked a different top 3, but the ones that spoke the loudest to me. Number 3 was The Lost Woman. I read this one first and I was just like, whoa, it was only 4 pages. You did so much good work in those 4 pages. You portrayed the subdued, really, really controlled environment of your Victorian dystopian, possibly hyper-realistic setting where the sister and mother are helping this young woman get dressed for her wedding. I really, really liked that restrained quality. And then it just exploded with the lock of hair, and then the monster emerged. Really, really, really amazing. I was thinking of Daphne Marlett's work when I was reading your story where this monster is within the proper lady. I highly recommend you read that if you might not read it in university. It's a really cool piece of work that explores a lot of the themes that you've brought up in this story. Very, very cool. That book is called Anna Historic, about women in the past and how they're erased, essentially. I really like how you showed the cost of perfection. I think that's a great life lesson for folks in all situations. Yes, perfection. We're lucky nobody died in your story, quite frankly, because that was a lot of rage. I kind of hope that maybe there's another chapter later where somebody does die. This would be a really great murder mystery later on if you choose to take it in that direction. The other thing that I really like is that you captured that lateral violence where women are subjugated under the patriarchy, and then instead of, you know, banding together against that force, that we tend to reinforce those societal norms. I think that is unfortunately too common, and you showed how understandable that was because they wanted what was supposed to be best for her. So very, very, very nice job on The Lost Woman. Great title. Just yes, superb. All right, my number 2 choice was Supernatural. It had some similar themes to the first story I was reading, that number 3 choice of The Lost Woman, but also was really different. It was set in a contemporary setting. You took the mundane into a fantasy world really seamlessly. It was very believable. That's something that I really appreciate as a reader, like a really great realistic grounding. And then I'm totally there for all of the fantasy that you throw at me if you do that to appeal to my logical side. All right, the things that I really liked about how you portrayed the realistic parts were that your details were really believable. Like, actually, my favorite line is from the first page where you're describing Katie being late for school. I dashed down the stairs with a comb, 2 books, and a sock. That kind of encapsulates, for those of us who often are late for things, what that looks like when you leave the house. So really good job. That's funny. It's detailed, but relatable. That's a really hard balance to strike. Very great work on that. I also liked that you portrayed the sibling relationships so well between Charlie and his sister, who was taken, and then Katie and her sister, who's still around. That was really believable. The dialogue and just the way they interacted, your character development was really good, especially considering how much space you had. I felt like I knew the characters. I felt like I understood their motivations, which is excellent. They're consistent with what I thought I understood about them. So I really was able to immerse myself in your story. The other thing, I loved the image of Katie turning into a hawk to do something kind of mundane. That was really cool. It really reminded me of Eden Robinson's Trickster trilogy, where her character Jared also has shape-shifting abilities and some treachery in his family too. Who do you trust? So really great job. I do wish I knew what happened, but leaving people wanting more is better than tacking on an ending where people are like, ugh. So that was an excellent choice in your surprise ending with, spoiler alert, it's the parents. They're gonna like turn their child in, maybe. We're not sure. If you want to see or read about a really cool escape, I have a second book that you might want to read. You should probably read the Marrow Thieves books by Sherry Demeline. So that I think of all these really great books when I read your stories tells you how much you've inspired me. So sorry for telling you all the things you should read. All right, my number 1 choice for story was Fish. And I struggled with the top 3 because number 3 and number 1, besides all of your stories are super different. So it's very difficult to compare and rank them. I hope you would appreciate that. It's kind of torturous. Okay, but Fish, I really liked how much you packed into 4 pages and the complexity that you brought to these ideas. So the number 3 story of Lost Woman was also about women being subjugated in a society that saw them as fitting into this one lower runged role. And in the first story, it was the women who kept each other in line for their own good at marrying well, etc. And there was no overt violence, but this story has very overt violence. So in the story, any woman who steps out of line is labeled a fish, female inciting senseless harm, and there's overpopulation in your dystopian, possibly future. Then sterilization follows, and then the politicization of that sterilization happens where it's a punishment. And I like that you don't give every single detail on this. I think that was a really wise decision because you didn't get bogged down with bureaucracy, essentially. And it leaves a lot of room for different readers to bring their own life experiences and things that they've read about into your story to make it more real, because you took me to a place where there was a one-child policy. You took me to imagined versions of Margaret Atwood's Handmaid's Tale that I cannot read or watch because I'll have nightmares till the end of time. And then it also took me into like Nazi Germany and like in the last century how often Black women were sterilized after slaves were freed, and anybody with a mental deficiency was sterilized against their will. So you conjured all of those things by leaving space for me. That was a great idea. So each reader will bring their own set of random things that they've read and seen and heard about or horribly imagined. I like also how all of your stories that I liked the most had family elements, especially siblings, where the siblings take care of each other in the best ways that they can. And from the outside, they might not seem perfect, but life is messy and complicated. Survival is very complex, and it can make us into people that we don't recognize sometimes or don't want to become. But that's just what life can be, especially in these really extreme situations. Yeah, really terrifying. I'm gonna have nightmares about your stories. Except, yeah, all three of them. But obviously they have made an impact on me because I keep thinking about all of them. Also some notes of Hunger Games in here. I like that too. It's really good, but your story was your own. Really great work. Thank you for your fantastic writing and the attention to detail. What a pleasure.
Great. Thank you to Darby Love and also all of the youth category winners. To get started with the adult category, I'd like to introduce Kathy Page. And although she's not here with us today, she also pre-recorded a video for all of the winners. I would also like to thank this year's advanced readers for this category. We had Elke Sorensen and Tracy Balanik, and they read all of the stories and chose the top 10 shortlists together for Judge Kathy to read from. And now I would like to invite to the front our third place winner from the adult category, Amy Mattes, from her story, Plain Jane. Amy Mattes is an over 40 skateboarder and mom with a heart-shaped rock collection. She won the second place in last year's Island Short Fiction Review and recently had her debut novel, fiction novel, Late September, published through Nightwood Editions. She is a VIU creative writing student and has previously been published in the Globe and Mail, Mutha Magazine, and Portal Magazine. And she's currently writing scrap poetry, hopefully on shredded postcards somewhere, and working on another novel. Congratulations, Amy. Our second place winner is Janet Miller from her story, May Long Weekend. Congratulations. Janet Vivian Miller makes her home on Gabrielle Island. Her children's book, Cross My Heart, was published in 2002. Her short stories have been widely published, and she is currently working on a novel, working on editing, revising, adding to, changing, all with much despairing, that is, as it should be. She's a longtime member of the Writers Union of Canada and the Federation of BC Writers and the Comox Valley Writers Society. Congratulations, Janet. And finally, it is my pleasure to announce our first place winner, Shelley Leedahl, for her story Hospice. Shelley is a professional multi-genre writer, reviewer, editor, and presenter. She's had 13 books released with publishers across the country and has been the recipient of several international fellowships. Recent books include the poetry collection Go, the illustrated children's book The Moon Watched It All, and the essay collection I Wasn't Always Like This. Born and raised in Saskatchewan, Shelley now divides her time between Ladysmith and Nanoose Bay, where she enjoys hiking, running, kayaking, and other outdoor activities. She has recently returned from walking in the Camino in Santiago in Portugal and Spain. Congratulations again. I would like now to re-invite Amy back up to the stage to read an excerpt of her story, Plain Jane.
Thanks, Laurent and Jenaya. Thank you to the Nanaimo Arts Council as well. This is a really fun opportunity, and I really will take this chance when I stand here to encourage all the awesome young people in the room to keep at their creative dreams and not give up on them at all. I'm going to start reading from the middle of my story, and that is because it likely has the least amount of expletives and probably won't give the whole thing away. So. The host returned with a complimentary glass of Prosecco and apologized. Jane flipped her phone upside down and took a sip, thought it was baby duck or even sparkling apple for expecting moms, and shuddered. When the waiter brought the Viognier, the first sip elevated her good taste and placated the promise of her evening escape. Her intention was to be in a fine establishment for some alone time with her laptop and maybe some John Coltrane. The keys in her fingers meeting in a bebop fast tempo of relief, an unpredictable virtuoso making sense of the world one keystroke at a time. She would, after all, be home the rest of the weekend, parenting without his help, having her tits pulled on in the middle of the night, her sweatpants stained with mysterious crud, a pile of their laundry to fold, little socks stuck to all her silk. Her body hummed with the weight of confusion, the inertia of uncoupling and how to go about discussing the finances. It coursed through her insides, tightening at her bite. It made swallowing difficult. Plain tired of her brain shadowboxing against her heart, her stomach held the answer all along. She knew that she'd failed, would end up renting, hyper-independence telling her to walk away without she was due. Pride is an annoying thing. A group of ladies wearing sashes and tiaras were celebrating a 50th birthday. They cackled in unison and threw their heads back and pecked at their food like chickens. They were well dressed, their hair dyed to their roots, rings and accessories and fine bags propped against the legs of the table and hanging off the backs of chairs. Jane wondered who took care of them, how they got their needs met, if the flourless chocolate cake was the pleasure center of their evening. Across the lounge, a large group of men came in, fresh from the golf course, still dressed in hats and sweat-wicking fabrics. One was loose and buzzed and lingered behind. They ordered lagers and cheered, and one of them, the alpha, stretched his body and arms beyond the lengths of the bench, sitting with his thighs agape. Jane was terrified of them, their arrogance, their propensity, and disregard. They left their hats on and spoke to the alpha like a focal point of testosterone worship. He sometimes puffed up and bellowed, and they all nodded in agreement. Jane turned her gaze to the two men occupying the bar. They talked of boats and motorcycles and then super sex. You've never been to super sex? It's the most iconic strip club in Montreal, one said. Was, Jane interrupted. That's right, they closed. You been there? A lot. I used to live in Montreal. Fun city. Jane hoped her comment would make her seen, enjoyed, like she still had value or shelf life. She wanted to impress the men, who were drab and past middle age with rolls sticking out the sides of their boring shirts. One of them turned his chair towards her, while the other didn't. As she perused the menu, she fantasized for a moment that the man who moved to see her more clearly would in turn offer to buy her dinner. It's your birthday. You're getting divorced. You? But you're so fun and you've been to strip clubs and you dine alone. You must be brave and confident, he'd say. You deserve it.
Thank you for that great read, Amy. And now I'd like to welcome Janet back up to read an excerpt of her story, May Long Weekend.
Thanks to the Arts Council, the Nanaimo Arts Council. Thanks everyone for coming. It actually is the Queen Victoria's birthday was Friday the 24th, but someone decided to put the May Long Weekend last weekend, not this. But my story is called May Long Weekend. And it starts out when I was a kid on the farm. Every spring I stepped on a nail. So this is moving a little further into the story. As I get a little older, I step on nails less often. This is good because my older sister and her friend connive a plan to ride their horses all the way down the road and over to the Mount Currie Rodeo on May Long Weekend. I whine and beg until they say, okay, you can come. Our parents agree to let us do the 12-mile ride. Our father's precautions are few. If you open a gate, shut it, and skirt the village. Be careful of cars. Saturday morning of the long weekend, we dress in our brand new blue jeans from Mr. Pipe's store. I already have a sunburn from the high school track meet the day before. For our horseback ride, we don't wear sunglasses or pack water or sandwiches. We saddle up. Dad has made sure the horses, my sister's chamois, mine Pooch, are properly shod and the cinches tight. We wait for Margaret's whoop and holler as she rides into our yard. Her horse, Lonesome, tough old thing, is high of wither, narrow of hip. Margaret is not. Off we go on our bay horses, past Erickson Road, Lex and Eleanor's, Dill's straight stretch, across Rhine Creek Bridge, Miller Creek Bridge, and on to Uncle Morgan's, where we pick up our cousin Vera, who is riding High Life, a dappled gray and spunky, maybe part Arabian. Our own horses are sturdy and mostly dependable, although Chamois likes to nuzzle her rider after she stops short and sends that rider over her head into a crumple on the grass. Pooch bucks and can jump any fence he pleases. Back out to the road with Vera, we are joined by a bunch of boys on their own horses who have appeared out of nowhere. The boys I know, but not the names of their scruffy horses. It was magical how they knew where we'd be and when. Sammy, Jimmy, Eddie, Bob bring a zesty element to the remainder of the ride to Mount Currie. They race their horses, break branches, and try to whip each other, shout out yodeling cowboy songs, tease the older girls. Nothing these wacky boys do makes any sense to me. I know that Sammy fancies Vera. They grew up on farms on either side of the road. To his great unresolved disappointment, Vera surpassed his 5'4" stature a couple years ago. What can he do with all that pointless longing but gallop his horse until foam collects around the sides of the bridle's bit, scoop up the grassy, greenish horse slobber, and throw it in Vera's direction over and over.
Thank you, Janet, for absolutely nailing that story. Now I would like to invite Shelley back for reading of an excerpt of her story, Hospice. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the Nanaimo Arts Council, and congratulations to all the winners today. I respectfully acknowledge that I live, work, and play on the traditional territories of the Snuneymuxw, Snuneymuxw, and Chemainus First Nations. I'm reading from the beginning of the story. It's called Hospice. Had he grown up in my era, he would have been a tree planter. That hydra-haired guy to drag out a battered acoustic, plumb a pick from deep inside his pocket, and sing American Pie, all the verses, near the end of the party when the last of the drugs were gone. He would have slammed his mouth onto mine without warning, minced my heart out with his smoker's teeth, then licked the ends of each of his fingers, a wildcat who'd verily enjoyed the meal. But the road apparently forked, for he became someone quite different. Now he occupies a warm bed in an open-windowed room at the top of a craftsman his distant nephews will fight over, and I have been hired to sit with him until he dies. Wind rattles the poplars as if cheerleading my charge toward the finish line, and a week ago a crow touched down on the window ledge, but it was premature. As quickly as it landed, the twig legs pushed off. The bird morphed into an inky smear against the white and watery sky. Randolph's ready to go, but the world's not giving him up just yet. I set my book down and study his hands, soft, spotted toads. He raises one, the right, the other lies helplessly by his side, and I bring cold oolong tea in a tumbler. I hold the glass against his bottom lip, still red as holly berries, and his blue eyes, they've resisted the degradations of age and illness and would fit into a 4-year-old's face, send fingers of pleasure across my spine. I wipe his mouth with a linen handkerchief and pull the blanket higher up the railway of his chest. I stroke his hand like a real nurse or matron, automatic with my there, that mocks present and past. If he could speak, he would denounce me, and I would not blame him. 30 years ago, I was a 20-year-old undergrad, and often mysteriously found myself in scholarly stratospheres far beyond my intellectual league. I was a good student, yes, but a student just the same. Or perhaps mystery played no part in it. I knew how to make the right noises, as they say, how to query and animate when professors engaged me beside elevators or at faculty club socials arranged for visiting writers and scholars. I knew just enough about migrating songbirds, Zone 3 perennials, the Boer Wars, they loved when I said Boertrekkers, and young to titillate the academy. They approved of my slim-hipped athleticism, swimming, and tennis, and I made sure they knew I was studying French cooking. The secret is to say little, lead a lot. Most people only want to talk about themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. I would also like to congratulate our honorable mention, who couldn't make it today either, but Robert Bowerman for his story titled "I've Got You Now." And I will now play a video of Judge Kathy's comments.
Hi there, I'm Kathy Page. I'm a short story writer and novelist and creative non-fiction writer, and I, until very recently, was teaching short fiction at Vancouver Island University. So I was really thrilled to be given this decision to make and to get to read the shortlist, which is really a strong one. Everyone who's on it should be very pleased with themselves. And what I saw was a lot of talent and accomplishment, along with a huge variety of subject matter and tone. Some of them were funny, some of them were quite bitter and dark. There was a speculative piece about cloning, a humorous murder mystery in a senior's apartment building. There was a sensitive study of the bonds between two men suffering from PTSD, a fable about mental illness, lots of character studies of people having to learn hard lessons, So one way and another, it was great. I was in no way ever in danger of being bored, which is a good thing. Beginning with very honourably mentioned, it goes to I've Got You Now. And now I've mentioned it several times, this was a study of the bond between two men who are long-term friends. They come from the same community and they share a history that includes traumatic experiences when they were in Afghanistan serving. And the events of one evening, years after the war, takes us on a sort of double journey, which is through that night and also in the past. And we end up with a deeper understanding of them and their commitment to each other. So one thing the writer did very well was to switch skillfully between the now and the past and the present. And another great strength, I thought, was just the sheer authenticity of the two characters and of their relationship. I don't know, and maybe they'll never tell us, whether the writer was inspired by real events in their own or a friend's life, or whether they just did an excellent job of researching the material. But either way, I believed in what I read. And that is a really a big achievement, to make your reader believe and not be sort of critical and fault picky, to be taken up with the reality of what you've put on the page. So well done. In the third place is Plain Jane. This is a rather savage, vicious piece, really, in which the writer presents the reader with a protagonist, a main character, that many will feel quite ambivalent about or even outright dislike. She's an affluent woman. She's acutely concerned with the sort of finer points, the nuances of status and the importance of expensive luxuries as a way of signalling her rank. So on the night when the story takes place, she's taking herself out to a fancy dinner because she wants to celebrate both her birthday and her completed divorce. Please note, she seems to have no one to celebrate with. During this attempt to prove to herself that she's doing just fine, she rekindles this unhealthy connection she has with alcohol. And as the story closes, she begins to unravel as she realizes that instead of what she wanted to be, she is old, discontent, and insecure. So she takes a sort of downwards trajectory. And I suppose I have a weakness for difficult characters like this. I find them more interesting in fiction, I have to say, not in my actual life, than nice, considerate people. And what particularly impressed me in this story was the sheer sort of emotional distance that the character travels in just a few hours, and the way in which her unlikability, to some at least, becomes by the rather bitter end irrelevant to the working of the story. So now we're getting to second place. That goes to May Long Weekend. And this is a gently funny and quite sweet, rather nostalgic story, I think, centered on this annual event in the narrator's community, the Mount Currie Rodeo. The writer uses the device of an older narrator telling her story, looking back in retrospect, and makes excellent use of specific details to suggest the place and the characters, which include animals. So the individuals and the community come alive on the page. The story is framed by the narrator's first and last experiences of that 12-mile ride that is the rodeo, and structured around her challenges with injuries to her feet caused by stepping on nails. It's quite funny. This narrator is very skillful and makes great use of this simple object, a mere nail, or rather there's quite a few nails in the course of the story, to give the narrative a shape. It's quite expertly done and leads to a nice little twist at the end when the passing of time and the narrator's strong desires seem to lead indirectly but surely to her triumphant coming of age in her small community in the rodeo. but there is a gentle twist and a nail comes into it. A good ending like this is hard to achieve. This author delivers it along with a smoothly written, entertaining and relaxing read. Well done. Now we're getting on to the winning story. So it's quite a contrast to the previous story. Hospice. It stood out clearly for me as the winner because it satisfies in so many different ways. It's original and traditional at the same time. Between a brilliantly engineered opening paragraph that plunges you right into the story's world and a satisfying but not overly comforting ending, this writer skillfully unrolls the story of a woman who has for all her adult life been part of a very unusual and unequal, rather creepy relationship, and is now just beginning to see it for what it was. This short piece left me with no doubt that the writer knows what a story is. The imagery is extremely effective. For example, an elderly man's hands are likened to soft, spotted toads. A little later, the narrator tells us that his abdomen dips up beneath the cage of his ribs, like a coulis, I say, following the hollow with my fingers, like what the glaciers left behind as surprises. Each sentence in this story is carefully crafted and deliberately placed. There's no waste. The writer has taken full advantage of the opportunities that the short story form offers. So congratulations to all the winners. And I would also like to offer my thanks to the Arts Council and everyone else involved in organising this contest, because I think it's really important in our area to have opportunities like this for writers to push themselves and to be rewarded for their developing skills. So thanks. Thanks for letting me be involved.
Thank you to Kathy Page for her insightful comments. I would now like to invite back Stephen Dennis for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurent. Wonderful, huh? Yeah. Truly wonderful. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this year's Ireland Short Fiction Review and Award Ceremony. Congratulations to all of the winners. Your writing is remarkable, and we look forward to your next literary endeavor. On behalf of the Nanaimo Arts Council, thank you to our sponsors and funders, the City of Nanaimo, the Province of British Columbia, Vancouver Island Regional Library, and Vancouver Island University, and thanks again to all the wonderful judges who participate in this event. And I'm pleased to tell you that I will be working with interns Jenaya and Laurent and President Steve Scott, who is handing out the awards, and the Arts Council Board to bring your stories from a digital format into a printed publication this fall. So for those of you who have not published before, this will be your first opportunity, and we are absolutely delighted to be able to offer that to all of the winners in this competition. Vancouver Island Library has already committed to sharing copies throughout the 39 libraries in the island so that your stories can be shared widely among readers across the island. And of course, our ambitions for distribution go further than that. We'd like to ask the winners to stay for a group picture right after this event, please. And let's end with one final round of applause for all of them.